One, that is not government policy.
Last week, President Cyril Ramaphosa and US President Donald Trump got into a very public argument.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President?
It's the most anticipated development in what has already been a turbulent year. First, Trump accused South Africa of committing genocide against white Afrikaners. Then, he unveiled a plan to resettle any white Afrikaner farmers willing to leave the country. On top of that, he slashed foreign aid and imposed tariffs on South Africa, moves that led many to believe AGOA is effectively dead. All of this unfolded without Trump once picking up the phone to consult South African intelligence or verify the facts on the ground. It's a lot to process, but here's the key. This isn't just about Afrikaners or land expropriation. What's really at stake is the future of South Africa's economy. So let's break down what Trump actually wants from Ramaphosa and how Elon Musk may be quietly working to prevent any real progress from taking shape. White South African farmers have long been a fixation for Trump. Back in 2018, during his first term, he claimed that South Africa was experiencing large-scale killings of white farmers, a statement that lacked any supporting evidence. At the time, the South African government dismissed the claim, saying Trump had been misinformed. While these attacks aligned with the broader narrative of white victimhood, often promoted by Trump's political base, the tensions between the US and South Africa did not disappear during the 4 years of President Biden's administration. In fact, they adapted. On February 2nd, Trump posted on his Truth Social platform, "South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly." Just days later, on February 7th, he signed an executive order claiming that South Africa's newly passed expropriation law, approved in December, allows the government to seize agricultural land owned by ethnic minority Afrikaners without compensation. The following day, Trump reiterated his stance in front of reporters, saying, "Terrible things are happening in South Africa," referring specifically to the land legislation. The executive order went even further, offering to resettle Afrikaner South Africans in the United States. Ironically, this proposal was rejected by several Afrikaner groups, including those that had previously lobbied Trump and his administration against the South African government. Nevertheless, a handful of Afrikaners did accept the offer and emigrated. These developments, combined with escalating tariff tensions, culminated in the highly anticipated meeting between Trump and President Ramaphosa that captured global attention last Wednesday. The meeting started on a cordial note, with both leaders sharing a few jokes and laughter. But the tone shifted dramatically when Trump began presenting a series of videos and articles. What quickly became evident was that Trump had come into the meeting intent on confronting and discrediting President Ramaphosa. Yet Ramaphosa responded with composure and strength, directly refuting claims of genocide, denying unlawful land seizures, and challenging the distorted portrayal of Malema's influence. And I want us to quickly examine some of the evidence that Trump presented in the meeting. The video was misleadingly crafted to give the impression, particularly to those unfamiliar with South African politics, that Malema holds executive power or speaks on behalf of the government. It also included a 2012 clip of former President Jacob Zuma singing a Liberation-era song containing the phrase, "Kill the Boer." Several members of the South African delegation in the Oval Office emphasized, neither Malema nor Zuma currently holds any government office, and the footage offers no evidence of official state policy. President Ramaphosa directly addressed this with Trump during the meeting. The second item Trump cited was footage showing white wooden crosses along a rural highway, which appeared to catch Ramaphosa off guard. He admitted he hadn't seen the video before. Trump described it as evidence of mass graves for white farmers. This was both inaccurate and misleading.
The video was actually from a community protest which was held in KwaZulu-Natal in September of 2020.
Contrary to Trump's claim of over 1,000, no bodies were buried there. The protest was a temporary memorial meant to raise awareness about farm-related violence, not a mass grave or official burial site. The third piece of evidence was a printed collection of online press clippings, largely consisting of articles from partisan blogs, unverifiable sources, and fringe websites. One article Trump held up was from the American Thinker, titled, "Let's Talk About Africa, which is where tribalism takes you." He told the room it detailed how white South African farmers were being burned. In reality, the article discussed crimes against women in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, making his claim entirely false. This collection of misinformation appeared carefully curated to support a fabricated narrative of white genocide and state-sponsored land confiscation in South Africa. Every single claim was unfounded, debunked, and unsupported by credible evidence. It's astonishing that a country with intelligence agencies as powerful as the FBI and CIA could not, or chose not to, produce a single piece of verifiable data to back the allegations. When South Africa brought a genocide case against Israel to the International Court of Justice, it was supported by concrete evidence. Yet in this instance, the US relied on discredited internet content. What made matters worse was that Trump gave President Ramaphosa very little opportunity to respond or challenge these claims. Instead, he gave the floor to several wealthy white businessmen in the room, many of whom lacked the expertise to speak meaningfully on international relations or policy. John Steenhuisen appeared focused on promoting the DA's agenda. His comments failed to reflect his role in the GNU and his position within the cabinet. Ramaphosa is basically there to ensure that AGOA does not get cancelled, and there is longer video explaining what happens when it does get cancelled. With that said, AGOA is a huge part of Steenhuisen's portfolio, and he dropped the ball. Johan Rupert, on the other hand, offered a more measured and thoughtful contribution. So much so that some observers are calling him the MVP of the meeting. The COSATU president also made a strong impression during her remarks. Still, a crucial opportunity was missed by the delegation of golfers, who instead of reshaping the narrative, reinforced it by emphasizing the country's struggles with crime and unrest, essentially feeding into Trump's rhetoric. On social media, opinions about the outcome of the meeting have been sharply divided. Amid the debates, some have questioned why South Africa feels the need to constantly counter false narratives coming from the US. But history offers a clear warning. The United States invaded Iraq and Afghanistan based on misinformation.
I take the fact that he develops weapons of mass destruction very seriously.
These are Arabs who are going to welcome us as liberators.
A million Iraqis are dead because you lied.
Diplomatic lies, if left unchecked, can cause lasting and catastrophic damage. For President Ramaphosa, the meeting exceeded expectations, especially given hostility towards South Africa, dating back to his first term. It had been suspected that Trump aimed to pressure the country into altering its policies by backing it into a corner. But Ramaphosa didn't fall into that trap. While he remained composed and strategic, some members of his delegation, except for the COSATU president, appeared overly eager and somewhat desperate, inadvertently undermining the leader they were meant to support. Still, this did not significantly weaken South Africa's negotiating position. Interestingly, Trump now appears more open to accepting the proposal Ramaphosa put forward. However, he continues to hold the AGOA agreement as a point of leverage. So far, his actions have not had a meaningful impact on South Africa's economy. The country remains stable and resilient, far from the edge of collapse. While South Africa could withstand potential pressure from the US, Ramaphosa clearly prefers to preserve all existing trade agreements rather than risk losing any. Ultimately, this puts Trump in a position where he may have little choice but to accept the terms South Africa has offered.